you got to start with a good foundation.
The chipper disc itself was 34,000 pounds.
500,000 pounds of rebar.
Yeah, in this line.
That's freaking wild.
You know, we're so good that we've set every single one bang on.
Today I'm here in Oregon State, just a little bit south of Eugene. I'm on site at a sawmill in Cottage Grove, and we're about to explore how a sawmill modernization project actually happens. I want to take you behind the scenes, meet the contractors that are making it happen, and I want to show you, bring you right into the action. We're going to get action of concrete pour. Let's go on site, meet the guys behind the work, and I'll show you around as I learn more.
Yeah, my name is Robert Lindors from Versa Industries. We're in Cottage Grove, Oregon, doing phase 2 of a modernization project.
I'm Jeremy Morris. I'm one of the owners of Versa Industries.
How do we get to steel and concrete now? What was underneath here when it was just like?
It was just asphalt. This was all paved asphalt. So it was nice ground, but basically come in and survey, saw cut all the asphalt, peel it all off, haul the asphalt, separate it from the gravel.
Yeah.
And then, start digging down. There's, you have to quote me, but there's helical piles and screw piles in here.
Okay.
Basically every 8 foot on center, and they go 30 to 40 feet deep.
Seriously?
Yeah, they're 12 to 16 inch diameter. There's some 18 inch, so I can show you a drawing later, and it's insane, like a 3D drawing.
Why do you need to go to that? Why so crazy?
Just because this like way back in the day, this actually used to be all lake in here, and they used to barge their lumber in. There's quite a bit of history with this mill.
A man-made lake here to transport logs so they weren't all in piles like this, and with less machinery and technology back then, it was easier to float them over to the mill, and they'd have what's called like a log dump, bring it through the water over to a dryland sort, and then how they're sorting them here now, head into the mill after that. So the ground's super soft because of that lake, and that's why they had to go the pile route.
And do you guys actually Versa put in the pile?
We did not. We were here as the piles were getting put in. We had to do some finishing on the pile work because coming out of the top of the piles is all the cages that then the rebar is going to get tied to. So you got to excavate down, rip the concrete up, excavate down, the piles go in, and then coming out of the top of the pile is pile caps and on some rebar cages. So then we can shoot all our dimensions from our benchmarks, start putting up rebar, formwork around it, and then what you see here sticking out of the concrete everywhere is all our bolt settings for obviously the structural steel to be put on, as well as embedded steel that the conveyors are welded to there. So all that goes in before any...
Wait, so just to be clear, we're seeing a little bit of steel poking through the concrete right here.
Everywhere.
And so what's the significance? Why is it there? Is my first question.
Well, none of this equipment's here when we get here. It's all raw. So have, on the drawings, we have all the dimensions. That's why we have to be so accurate. It's quite an art, actually, to get all these bolts down to the millimeter so that there's no more work once you're standing the steel up. So
if you just poured like a concrete slab and you threw the equipment on it, it'll crack it. It's not going to support its weight, right?
It depends. Like some places you're allowed to cinch anchor the legs down on residual conveyors.
Yeah.
Down here with the county, we're not allowed.
Okay.
So we have to put embeds in. They have to be welded down.
This is an embed steel.
Yeah, it's a wide flat, like that's a W8 wide flange, and it's embedded. The concrete's 30 inches thick, right?
Jeez.
And then that embed sits in the top of the mat. So we have to suspend it, make sure it's not going to move anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the bar all gets fed through it.
Yeah. Well, as we know, at a sawmill, you got a lot of crazy vibrations, impacts, and all this other stuff, a lot of weight to pull around. So you really need support that's going to hold it up for a long time.
Tie that right in the mat, and then there's no uplift or anything, right?
So people and I really want to know, before the concrete's here, how do I get a peek into what happens before the concrete like fills it all in? You said it was like a maze or an artwork of how it looks. Can we take a look at that?
There's a little piece over here that we could go and look at.
Yeah?
It's they're actually pouring it today. We've done this so many times and trying to change it. This is probably the best way to set bolt settings, especially when you don't have anything close to the side. They all sit directly over top of these rigid elements. Those are the piles I was talking about earlier. So those are all the piles that they're 30 feet deep.
Where do you see the actual pile?
That's called a rigid element. So those are 30 feet deep in the ground. So yeah, here's some bolt settings. They're out in the middle, right? How do you anchor those properly? We have to, we tie the two mats together to make it rigid, right? So now you can stand on these things. They don't bounce or anything. You have to keep your minimum clearance, right, for your ground allowance underneath the base plates of your structural steel. We have it's an instrumentational tool. We call it a theodolite, right? And there's other total stations that we use. And it runs off GPS.
Okay.
Right? And then you program into your off your CAD system, you put your drawings in there.
Yep.
And then you can put your control joints so it actually maps out. So we can set the control points, find out our benchmark where we are. Like I can put this right in the computer, set up right there, and then I can just walk around with my basically my GPS and shoot that, and it'll tell me exactly what bolt. That's a BP1. Dead center on this grid line, right?
That's incredible. So how accurate can you get a bolt positioned in a site?
Bang on, like within a 16th of an inch.
Within a 16th of an inch.
Yeah.
Dude, that's actually really incredible. I mean, which is important, right? Because if we look at the plate at the bottom of a structural element, I mean, they're not giving you much tolerance, right? Not much wiggle room, and you got to land 4 of them, and they're all got to connect like a giant Lego piece here.
Yeah. You got to start with a good foundation, and that actually starts below the concrete and the accuracy of what we're doing, as you see here.
Crazy is like it looks like these the steel structures are actually floating right now.
Yeah, so the steel plates, they're sitting on the bottom nut of that bolt setting. And you want you want a gap in there because
there's another nut down here.
Yeah, you can feel that, and that has to be placed right to height, obviously.
Yeah.
But you want this gap because you come in and you'll grout all these columns for, there's going to be movement in them and stuff. And every single one of these columns, there'll be weeks and weeks of grouting here before we get punted.
So every single column, every attachment point of the concrete gets grout?
On the equipment too.
Is it structural or is it just aesthetic?
It's structural.
It is structural.
Yeah. So this big wall here that we poured, a ramp coming down from the top of the wall, and those loaders will go grab logs from the piles, bring them up here, and dump them onto that stem deck there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we still have the ramp to do here.
These are this is impressive. Some pretty thick concrete right there, huh?
Yeah.
And a bunch of, inside there's a whole maze of steel and rebar and stuff inside, right?
Yeah. You can only pour so much at a time. Got to let it set, pour more. This wall's pretty small. That one's a little bit bigger.
That looks like 3 pours, 2 pours or something?
That's a 12-foot wall there.
You go over 12 and then it's an engineered pour as soon as you go 12 feet up. But yeah, you pour 4 feet at a time.
4 feet at a time, I gotcha. And so why do you need a separate foundation for a debarker? I mean, it's a violent machine.
Yeah. So clash and bang, and you don't want that tied to your building, right? Or else your building's shaking too. So you try to
isolate
everything as best as possible.
I gotcha. It looks like a good size piece of concrete here, right? That's isolated.
Yeah, this was like 36 inches thick. This one had a lot of number 7 and number 8 rebar. So 30 to 40,000 pound piece of equipment.
It's
right?
30 to 40,000 pounds of equipment is a debarker.
Yeah.
You'd guess, right?
I pulled out a couple with the crane, so I
Oh, man.
pulled the rings out first, and then
Jeez.
after that one today will be 3,500 cubic yards in the ground.
3,500 cubic yards.
Yeah.
That's a lot of concrete.
It's a lot, yeah. Yeah, I thought I'd just catch this since we were walking by. These are a different type of bolt settings. The plates are 1 inch thick. So this plate's 1 inch thick. And then it has a piece of pipe welded underneath each location. It's about 12 to 16 inches. And then the bottom is capped. And it's got a nut welded in there. So these rods, anchor rods, they actually thread into the nut. And the purpose was so that if your bolt settings was out a little bit, is you have a little bit of play, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of play to land it. And then once you do your epoxy pour, the epoxy goes in there and
It all locks up tight, huh?
it all locks up tight. But, you know, we're so good that we've set every single one bang on.
So far, so good. How many have you set so far here on the site?
Complete bolt settings like this, I believe we're at 550 bolt settings.
3,500 bolts.
3,500 bolts.
Dang.
Bolt settings, yeah. Do the math, divide by 4 or whatever, yeah.
So we're in what's going to be a control room.
Yeah.
Just pouring the slab right now. The guys they're pumping concrete in right now. Small slab, so everyone's just kind of working, finishing as you go. They're vibrating in the corners where it's all raw there still. They're going to screen it to get it flat, and then we have a broom finish across it for slip resistance. They wanted a broom finish on this.
And eventually there'll be a nice big room here with, you said, the MCC room, right? Where it's going to be the controls and stuff.
Structural steel on this foundation up to, and then there'll be pan deck on top. Q decking, pan deck, some people call it. And then there'll be a concrete floor on top. So a working concrete floor over top this area.
Yeah.
And then it'll be a wood framed control building.
I got you.
Sitting up top too. And that'll basically give eyes on the infeed and the outfeed, right?
Yeah, yeah. Anything you want to point out about the quality of work? What are the key things people are looking for when we could address concrete, the work that's underneath the concrete?
So we really want to check, basically, we want it to be level. So we shoot it in with lasers. They'll do screed rails. Basically, they'll pour a little strip, shoot it with the laser, screed it so it's nice and level to top of floor. And then they'll fill it in, like you can see, and they'll work it back so it's nice and level. You don't want any holes or pockets where this is all outside, right? So you don't want water building up where in the winter time you got potential slipping hazards because it'll freeze, right? So that's the other reason why you could see he had a broom there. They'll bowl float it, and then he's got his broom there, and then he'll give it a light broom, and that's just traction. So
yeah,
that's what he's doing on the edge here. He's already broomed it, but he's just turning it up there with the little bit.
Yeah.
That was kind of a special request by the mill because we were going to polish everything, which is these power trowels, and you run around and it's just a smooth glass finish, but if you've ever been in a sawmill and you step on a little bit of sawdust on that, you'll slip and
so that's another safety feature for the sawmill.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, to get that grip. I got you.
It kind of works hand in hand. It's easier to blow off and clean and sweep.
Yeah.
But you risk a lot more, if somebody falls and breaks their leg
Safety,
or
right.
cracks their head, right? So
give me some specs on what we're seeing today, like the overall pour, your number of trucks, number of crew for something like this. I know it's not a big project for you.
No, this one's small. It's eight trucks. It's about 10 yards per truck.
Yeah.
And we just have a small crew here.
Yeah.
4,000 PSI concrete. I mean, it's like we said, this one's pretty simple. They'd wrap the bolts here. That's just
protecting
the threads. No concrete gets on that. Nuts will go on easier after.
Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing worse when you go to stand some steel on your bolts and there's concrete baked on them, then their names are getting cursed, right?
So, yeah.
No, everything goes together smooth. They'll take the tape off later, make sure everything's good, and then they'll throw the mushroom caps, kind of the impalement caps back on.
Yep.
Until the steel goes on, so.
And just little things, Sherelle, you'll notice it's really hot, so you'll notice they'll throw some water at it here and there, and when they're floating it, and it's just these guys have done it so much, and it's a smaller pour, so they don't need they got this handled.
Yeah. After here, you guys did a phase 1, that's another side of the sawmill, right?
Right.
Can we go there and check that out in a little bit?
Stacker building, yeah, we can do that.
What is that building?
It's a sorter stacker.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we see from the outside that you guys did here?
Pretty much everything that you see on the outside with the building liner and these eyebrow overhangs, all the trim, basically we finished the building envelope. So the only thing that was here when we got here was there was a portion of the building complete. So when we got here, the primary steel, like all the columns were up, the roof was on, but none of the wall girts were on. So these are wall girts, these Z girts. Okay. So the Z girts weren't on. So we installed all the Z girts, the strapping, and put that's part of the overhang. That's an eyebrow, we call it. It goes over the stairs. And we put all the strapping in. We put these tensioning rod cables in to pull everything plumb. Put all the flange braces on. Yeah, did the installation and then all the liner on the outside, all the cladding. Cladding and trim.
How long did it take to do a building of this size?
This one was, I think we were, I was going to say like 3,000 hours, 3,000 man hours, I believe we were in, right around there.
So I guess if somebody didn't know what you guys did and had a project, something where they need a building built or something, could you kind of point out what it is that you can do if you're given the full scope? What can you take on? Yeah,
we can do like ground up turnkey projects. Everything there's only a few things we don't do, and that's like the civil, like the underground, the plumbing, the piping, the sprinkler fitting, and we don't touch electrical. But everything in between.
Not yet, right?
Well, yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
But yeah, we do pre-eng buildings, fabrication on site.
All right. Well, thanks so much for giving me a full tour.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Excited to get back to the other side now.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much, guys.
Go see how the concrete's dry.
Rolling.
Yeah, let's do this. Thank you.